Hello everyone, and welcome to another 5 ways tutorial video. This one is called 5 ways to sound better than you really are. Now, it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek sort of title, a bit sort of like a fun title, but it's got a very serious content. What this tutorial is about is how you can sound better just using the skills that you already have. For instance, you want to record or perform something. How do you make it sound good? Well, you can't do it by playing something that is too difficult for you. You can't do it by playing more chords. You have to do it in a musical way. To sound better, you actually have to play it more musically. So let's just examine these 5 ways. Okay, number 1, keep it simple. A good musical performance really has nothing to do with how difficult the piece of music is. Obviously, if you're a concert pianist, you'll want to play something that is difficult, not something that a beginner could play. But a good performance has not got anything to do with how tricky the piece of music is. A good performance is a good musical performance, however the simple the piece is. Let me give you an example. In a concert you might hear a piece of music, a sonata perhaps, piano sonata by Mozart. And Mozart's piano sonatas are quite easy to play. The notes are quite easy under the fingers. Or a concert pianist might play something by Franz Liszt, which will be incredibly difficult to play. The notes are very difficult, and many beginners or younger players would not have a chance of learning to play them. But both could be good performances, or both could be bad performances, depending on how musically they are interpreted, or depending on how stylishly they're played. It's not a matter of how difficult it is, it's a matter of how well the piece of music is played. Exactly the same thing applies to ukulele playing. So don't perform something that is too difficult for you. If you're doing a performance or a recording, don't perform something that's too tricky for you. Or don't try and, put it another way, don't try and do things on the ukulele that are too difficult for you. It can just sound a mess. So let me give you an example. I'm going to play a song called This Land Is Your Land. It's a very simple song. It's just got 3 chords in it. And I'm going to play it very simply first and try and play it well. This land is your land. This land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land is made for you and me. Now, that sounded fine to my ears, and I don't think I made too many mistakes in that. Let me try again, and this time I'm going to make lots of mistakes, intentionally. Okay, here we go. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Okay, now that was an absolute disaster. It was so bad. I was trying to concentrate on getting it wrong actually, that my singing voice suffered as well, because I couldn't concentrate on what I was singing. But there were so many mistakes. The timing was completely out. I was trying to do strums that really didn't fit in. I added extra notes to a bar. I stopped, I think, in one place. I played some terribly wrong notes. And it's quite easy to do if you're trying to attempt something that is too difficult for you. It's much better to play a simple piece of music well than play a difficult piece badly. Or to put it another way, it's much better to play a simple piece in a simple way that you are able to play than play that same piece in a difficult, tricky manner that you stumble over. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try hard to learn new techniques and to try things that are difficult for you, but here I'm talking about when you're doing a recording or performing something. So number one is keep it simple. Number two, you don't need to know every chord that there is. You know, knowing lots of chords does not make you necessarily a better player. Most really good players know most of the chords. But you know, you can play all the chords all the way up the fretboard. So however many chords you think there are, you can play them in multiple positions. This is a chord of C. This is a chord of C. There's lots in between, and let's do an extreme one. This is a chord of C. You don't need to know all of the chords. Stick to a few keys and learn to play in those keys well. Not because playing in certain keys are easier, like for instance the key of C, the key of F, the key of G. Those are all good keys to play in, but it's not because those are easy chords, it's because you can do things with them on the ukulele. Let me just give you an example of that, and I'm going to use the same song as I did before. This time I won't make so many intentional mistakes. Here we go. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land is made for you and me. Now, I was doing lots of little runs there. This land is your land. Or I could do, this land is your land. This land is my land. There's lots of little runs you can do. If you prefer, you can strum and you can do some added notes. This land is your land. This land is my land. So you can do added notes as well. You can decorate these chords, even though you're playing chords that you can easily play. That song only contains the chords of C, F and G. So you can learn ways to embellish the chords that you know, rather than learning new chords all the time. You don't need to learn every chord in the book, at least when you're beginning. And your aim, remember, is to be able to do a good performance or recording, to do what you're doing well. So learning to just embellish the chords that you can already play is much better than learning new chords. Believe me, there are so many of them. When you start including some of the chords used in jazz, there are so many new chords. Number 3, don't do strumming patterns. Now, I better explain this. You do need to learn how to play strumming patterns, because that's part of learning the techniques of being able to play the ukulele. But you don't need to think of every song having a strumming pattern. And worse still, you don't need to play the same pattern throughout the song. It starts to sound very boring and even quite silly. And don't forget also that complicated strums don't necessarily sound better. let me try that same song again and see what you like. I'm going to play the very simplest chords that I can. This land is your land, this land is my land, and so on. So I'm just playing simple chords, but I'm trying to do it well. I'm playing them at the tempo that I'm playing in. In other words, the gaps between each of the notes of that broken chord are carefully thought through. Or you can do something like this. This land is your land, this land is my land. Now what I'm doing is, and that's quite a complicated strum to do, and it doesn't sound to my mind any better, or to my ears any better. So remember, complicated strums don't necessarily sound better. You can improve your song by making the accompaniment sound more interesting. For instance, have a listen to this. This land is your land, this land is my land. Now, all I did was playing very simply, and then at the end of a phrase I did a slightly more complex pattern. When you're doing a song with a chorus and a verse, or a verse and a chorus, it's quite common for the chorus to be more loud. One of the ways of giving a contrast to the chorus part is by playing a slightly more complicated strum. But still, remember, at the end of a phrase you can always do a sort of fill. The sort of thing in a rock band you might hear the drummer playing, you know, instead of playing the standard rhythm, do it on the ukulele. So at the end of each little phrase I was putting a slightly more complicated strum. So strumming patterns are fine as a way of learning to build up a sort of library of techniques on the ukulele. But doing a strumming pattern all the way through a song is not very interesting. If you do decide to do that, do a strumming pattern that you can play cleanly and well. Number four is be original. For goodness sake, don't try and copy the original recording just for the sake of copying it. You might want to try and get close to what it sounds like on the record or on the original recording. But remember, when different performers, I don't know if I did mention actually, let's take two people who've sung the same song, Elvis Presley and Willie Nelson. Now, they will sing it completely differently. Their voices are different. The accompaniment will be different. Willie Nelson's version of the song can't remember the song. Didn't I want to love you quite as often as I could have. I don't know what the song's called, I've forgotten, but you may know the song. But it's sung by Willie Nelson. Elvis Presley's done a version. Many other people have done a version of it. The Pet Shop Boys did a version of the same song, and they all do it differently because they all want to be original. They don't want to copy somebody else. Now the same applies to you as a ukulele player. Why try and copy somebody when you can very simply do an original version? Every professional that plays the ukulele tries to do their own version. They try and be different. Play it your way. Now let's take a very simple way of doing it. Again, the same song, not the one I couldn't remember. This is This Land Is Your Land. Here we go. So I'm going to play it slowly. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, to the redwood forests, to the Gulf Stream waters. This land is made for you and me. Okay, now what did I do? I played it slower. I also messed about with the tune a little bit. And this is one way that many singers use to make it sound their own. Now, you don't have to take it slower. It doesn't always work to take a song faster, by the way. But you can play it quieter, or you can play it more sadly, or you can give it another kind of flavour that you think sounds well. You know, if you think it sounds well with a good beat, then give it a good beat. But be original. No matter how short a time you've been playing the ukulele, it's always good to try and play a song in your own way. There may be reasons why you want to try and get close to the original. You may be playing with other people and you're doing a cover of the song in a concert, and that's fine. That's fine. But remember, if it's a rock song, most rock songs don't have ukuleles in them, so using a ukulele, you're not even going to get close to sounding like the original. You don't need to do it in the same key. You don't need to use the same strumming pattern. Just do it differently. Do it your way. This brings us to number 5. Now, number 5 may be a bit more contentious. A lot of people record their performance badly. Here we're talking about recording now. We're not talking about performing, although you may want to record your performance. Well, obviously not everyone has good recording equipment. I'm blessed to have quite a lot of good recording equipment, and I use it as I should to try and get the best recording that I can. But recording it well is important. Now, many people use their iPhone for recording the performance, and that's great. The iPhone gives really excellent video nowadays. But I'm talking here about audio. If you are recording with an iPhone that's perhaps 6 foot away from the performer, 6 foot is not the best distance. I'm using feet here because of many people are from the American system who use imperial measurements, and I am old enough to still think in feet and inches. But let's say if you're 6 feet away or 2 meters away, that's not the ideal distance to record audio. Better to record it like I am, using a microphone that's quite close. This one here, and there's another one just here. So I'm recording in stereo because I've got 2 microphones. Now, that brings me to another point. If you've only got an iPhone, then you have a slight problem, and I would say record it as close as you can. But if you do have another way of recording it, such as using microphones and just having them going into a computer, this is recording me now as I speak to you. That will work well. It doesn't even have to be an expensive microphone. You certainly don't need 2 of them, but that will work better than having the microphone at the same distance as whatever is recording the video. So you're recording then the video and the audio separately, which means you have to put them together in a video app of some sort. But you know, a video app comes with just about every new computer nowadays, and all you've got to do is get to use it in its very simplest form. Synchronizing the audio with the video is incredibly simple nowadays, because remember, the video will already have audio on it. What you're doing is recording a better audio. You just get them in line and then delete the audio from your video recording. So doing a good recording is something that is important. Many people let themselves down by doing a bad recording to a good performance. But if you want to sound better than people would expect you to sound, doing a good recording is something that is important. Lastly, every single professional recording has effects added to it. They might add reverb to it, they might add some compression. Don't worry about compression. If you've not used it, don't worry about it at all. But adding some effects can make your voice sound better. If you record something in the bathroom, it'll sound better than if you record it in a lounge, which is covered in curtains, carpets, that sort of chairs, soft chairs, that sort of thing, because they all absorb the sound. So in order to improve your voice and the sound of the instrument you're playing, you might want to add some effects. You know, even if you go back to the 1930s, they used to add effects to recordings. It wasn't digital effects like now. They had a room that was tiled, and they played the recording at one end of the room and recorded it again at the other end of the room. This was called an echo chamber. It was actually a room. And old studios, such as Abbey Road Studios, for instance, still have an echo chamber. They don't really use it anymore because they've got digital alternatives, just as I have on this computer. Actually, that's not the computer. That's the computer. That's just a screen. So recording it well is another way of making you sound better than you really are. So there's my 5 ways to sound better than you really are. It's a slightly tongue-in-cheek title, but it's a serious thing. There are ways that you can just use the chords that you know, rather than trying to do things that are too difficult for you, or thinking that a song is too difficult for you. Yes, some songs use maybe a dozen chords, but most songs use 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 chords, and you can play them in whatever key is comfortable for you, both for your voice and the instrument. So there's my 5 ways to sound better than you really are. And I thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next 5 ways video. Thank you and goodbye.